all over the world over here. Now I want to speak about the famous Lauderdale Road Synagogue, Spanish Portuguese Synagogue, based in the United Kingdom. Obviously, it's an Orthodox Jewish congregation. It's actually located in Lauderdale, on Lauderdale Road, respectively, in the city of Westminster, West London, in England, in the United Kingdom. We're going to explore some of the history with regards to the synagogue, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's under the senior leadership of Rabbi Joseph Tuek, who happens to be the Nasi of the Spanish Portuguese community in the United Kingdom. A very, very famous old synagogue in of itself. I think it was established all the way back in the year 1657 as a congregation. It was completed in the year 1896. And it's a listed building also. Now, I think it was designated as a listed building on the 6th of September in the year 1989. We're talking about around 36 years ago here at the time of recording. Very interesting enough. So now it's known as, let's say, the community hub of the S&P Sephardic community. It's also, I think, known as the Kahal Kadosh Shara Shamayim, the holy congregation of the gate of heaven over there. Now, they obviously follow the Sephardic tradition, the synagogue as itself. That was completed in the year 1896 and designated as a Grade 2 listed building in the year 1989, respectively. Now, obviously, it's a very, very famous synagogue. There's a lot of history we can say about it. Now, the Spanish Portuguese Jewish congregation was founded in the year 1657 in London, following a petition by Rabbi Moshe ben Israel of Amsterdam to Oliver Cromwell. Very famously enough, we're talking all about, Jews were expelled for more than 300 years, and we're coming in a time period where there's a rampant anti-Semitism again. That's re-entered the United Kingdom with the horrors that happened on Yom Kippur. Now, I think it was initially, the petition was from 6 Jews living in London who sought permission to worship freely and to acquire land for a cemetery. Now, Oliver Cromwell provided a verbal agreement, and it was the first time the Jewish people were able to profess their faith openly since the 1290 expulsion by Edward I, all those years back. Now, the history of Lauderdale Road is a history, let's just say, of a move across London by the Sephardic Jewish community until mid-17th century. And we know that there was only one Sephardi synagogue in London, the famous Bevis Mark Synagogue in East London at the edge of the city of London. Now, poorer community, let's say, of family originally from Spain and Portugal, many of them crypto-Jewish refugees from Spanish Portuguese inquisitions, had originally congregated in this area in the 18th century it was. Now, come what, it was around the mid-18th, 19th century, the mid-1800s, the single synagogue meant that members of the Sephardi community resident in wealthier West London had no Sephardi, let's say, place to worship, or were forced to walk across town on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, for prayers. Now, there was a drift of Sephardi Jewry from East London. They gathered pace, which led, let's say, to diminished presence at Bevis Mark Synagogue and the need for a new synagogue. As the community rose in prosperity and West London emerged as capital's most desirable district, and this move would end up becoming accelerated. Now, the community's first West London Sephardi synagogue was established in a Wigmore Street in 1853. In 1867, it moved to the Bryanstone Street, which is near Marble Arch. And I think come with the 1880s, as Victorian London evolved, the community continued to shift westwards, and attendance at the Bryanstone Street would start to decline. In 1892, it was ascertained only 64 members at that stage in time of the congregation were living within a mile of Bryanstone Street. But at that 93 lived within the same distance of Clifton Road in Maida Vale, which is fast emerging as the heart of the community. A total of 62% of members of London's Sephardi community were living in Northwest and West London. This would lead to the decision being taken to build a large synagogue in that area. Now, it's actually interesting. Lauderdale Road Synagogue opened in 1896. The synagogue's building was constructed by the Byzantine Revival by architects Davis and Emanuel. Its interiors, let's say, reflect the success of its membership in the late 19th century in global commerce across the British Empire and beyond. It has a large domed ceiling, grand stained glass windows set in arched recesses, tapestry carpets across the polished wooden floors, as well as a large ark. The 19th century history, let's just say, of Lauderdale Road is wrapped up with the Sephardi families of what the chronicler of Jewish life in Britain, his name was Chaim Bermant, called the cousinhood, let's say, of the Victorian Anglo Jewish gentry. Now, let's say many of the most esteemed families of Victorian Anglo Jewry were associated with Lauderdale Road Synagogue, such as Sassoon, Montefiore, Mokata families. Prominent figures who attended Lauderdale Road in the 19th century included the sons of David Sassoon of Bombay, such as Sassoon David Sassoon, Reuben David Sassoon, and Arthur Sassoon. Sir Edward Sassoon of the next generation was present, I believe, was the president of the community. Now, their arrival marked the start of a growing number of members who were not by heritage Sephardi Jews from Spain and Portugal, but Mizrahi Jews that originated from communities across the Middle East, respectively. So that's what we have to point out over here, which is very, very interesting. Now, the Jewish national home, Lauderdale Road, would also play a key role in both, let's just say, the emerging Zionism in the United Kingdom and different efforts to compile Sephardi heritage. At the turn of the century, the Sephardi community was led by a famous rabbi who we'll speak about in a minute, Rabbi Moses Gaster, between the years 1887 to 1917, who played a major role in the promotion of Zionism in the British Jewish community. The first meeting to plan the Balfour Declaration was held in the home of Rav Gaster, Hacham Rabbi Gaster. Now, the role of senior rabbi was filled by the Sephardi scholar Rabbi Shem Tov Gagun, who we've spoken about before. He was between the years 1920 to 1953. He led a large-scale ethnographic effort to compile the full diversity of both Sephardi and Mizrahi customs, an approach to Jewish law compiled in a multi-volume famous book called the Keteh Shem Tov, which is spoken about before. Let's speak a bit about Rav Shem Tov Gagun for a minute. He was a great rabbi. He was actually a Sephardic rabbi, and from a Moroccan rabbinical dynasty which would emigrate to Palestine from Spain at the time of the Inquisition, famously enough. Now, it's actually interesting. Growing prosperity would continue to change the profile of the community afterwards. I think the orphanage, originally attached to Lauderdale Road, was closed in 1940 as it was no longer almshouses in East London where, let's say, were similar disposed of. During the Second World War, the synagogue suffered bomb damage along with much of the surrounding area due to German raids. Members of the community also, I think, began to enjoy political prominence at that time. Sir Philip Sassoon, for example, between 1924 and 1929, and again 1931 to 1937, when he served as Under-Secretary of State of Air over there. And in 1937 was the first Commissioner of Works until his passing in 1939. He was a member and donor of the community. Now, I think during this time, another prominent member of the community was someone named Leslie Hoare Belisha. He served serving as a Ministry of Transport between the years 1934 to 1937, and was a War Secretary, I think, from 1937 till some point in the 1940s. I think maybe 1940 it was, actually. Meanwhile, I think the community would suffer heavy losses, sadly, among its young men who fought in large numbers in both world wars. However, despite its material and political successes, rising assimilation, and both there was a much wider Ashkenazi community, and British society more generally saw the still dominantly Spanish-Portuguese origin community beginning to shrink in the second quarter of the 20th century. It will become more of a minority. Now, post-war Jewish immigration, Lauderdale Road's history in the late 20th century was defined and revived by a new wave of Jewish immigration to London. The post-war years saw the declining numbers of the historically Spanish-Portuguese Sephardi community go into reverse with the large-scale arrival into the community, let's say, of Baghdadi origin, let's just say, in of itself, spoken about before, and Iraq Jews from Asia and the Middle East would come. Now, there was a man named Albert M. Hyamson. He was a prominent member of the community and leading historian of Anglo Jewry, who would make various remarks with regards to that point in time. Now, it's actually interesting. There was a leading figure in welcoming, let's say, this post-war migration was Rabbi Solomon Gaon, who took up the leadership of the community. I think it was around the year 1947, varying opinions, and would serve as a chief rabbi, I believe, of several communities in the British Commonwealth. He was a member of the Montefiore College, a Jewish educational organisation associated with Lauderdale Road. Remember, we spoke about it before. And he welcomed young Jewish men to pursue Jewish studies in London, especially people from Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria, as those communities emigrated en masse to Israel and France in decades following the creation of the State of Israel. Now, opening up the community further, there was other notable figures, let's just say, who partook in this program at the Montefiore College, including Rabbi Israel Elia, who would come to London from Jerba, for example, Tunisia, as a young boy in 1971 to join, let's say, this program. Tunisia as a young boy, so that's interesting. He would later qualify as rabbi of the Jews College in London and serve the Lauderdale Road community alongside Rabbi Abraham Levy and also alongside Rabbi Joseph Dweck until Rabbi Elia would pass away in the year 2024. Remember, we've spoken, I believe, about him also beforehand here inside this series, which I very much recommend everyone to look into. Now, meanwhile, prominent members of the community, especially in the 20th century, include Alan Mokata, Nathan Sachi, I think his family came to London from Baghdad, for example, and was the father of Charles and Maurice Sachi, and a prominent member of the community. And Maurice Sachi married his first wife, Gillian Osband, at Lauderdale Road, and it's reported over both Charles and Maurice Sachi have donated to the Lauderdale Road Jewish community. Now, the writer Simon Sebag Montefiore received his bar mitzvah at Lauderdale Road. He's another key figure, let's just say. Now, over the course of the 20th century, the community welcomed Jewish refugees and immigrant families from, let's say, across North Africa, Asia and Middle East. Lauderdale Road is a growing community, currently, I believe, or most recently statistics, 600 member families. Now in the 21st century, the community continues to welcome new families from France, Israel, and the United States of America, reflecting its identity, let's say, as Sephardic. So we're just going to continue over here. So 600 member family at presently. 600 member family at presently. There's as many as at this point in time. And obviously they come from France, Israel, United States of America. Now it's interesting, reflecting its identity as a pan-Sephardic and no longer strictly Spanish or Portuguese descendant community, the congregation was renamed in 2015 as the S&P Sephardi Community. Today the community has families with historic origins, let's say, across from Sephardi diaspora, including Iraq, India, Iran, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Gibraltar, and frequently hosts events and religious ceremonies honoring them all respectively. Now, it's actually interesting that S&P Sephardi community also maintains the historic Bevis Mark Synagogue and the Holland Park Synagogue, also associated with community it's Bet Din. They've got the Sephardi Kashrut Authority, Jewish Choice Elderly Care Campus, the Montefiore Endowment, alongside various cemeteries and charities. Together, these communal and philanthropic heart of Sephardi culture in the UK, very much so it is, to accommodate young families. A Le Petit Nursery, a Jewish daycare centre for small children, opened, I believe, on that site. And I think come up 1977, the community was led by Rabbi Dr. Abraham Levy. He would retire as a chief rabbi, I think, in 2012. He was a self-described, let's say, moderate and defiant centrist in Jewish community affairs. He established a Ne'ima Jewish preparatory school, welcomed continued arrivals from, let's say, across the Muslim world, and Iraq especially, and was said that Iraqis were a rejuvenating force within our congregation. Now, it's become like more of a globalized community nowadays. The congregation's senior rabbi currently is Rabbi Joseph Dweck, originally from the United States, and in reverence to its Victorian heritage, Lauderdale Road currently is one of very few synagogues where the rabbis and wardens continue to wear traditional top hats. According to Rabbi Abraham Levy, in his youth, many prominent members of the congregation would come to the service in white tie and tails for the Kol Nidre service on Yom Kippur, and that tails gave way to jackets in the 1990s, and now it's lounge suits. The evolving style reflects a continuing link and evolution from Lauderdale Road's history as synagogue of Sephardi Anglo-Jewish gentry, respectively, or cousinhood, as it's become globalized pan-Sephardi community, we can see. Now, the Western liturgy of the London S&P Sephardi community is considered one of the closest to the Sephardi liturgy originally in Spain. However, reflecting the pan-Sephardi identity of the community, additional parallel services are led on the High Holy Days, following the liturgy used by Baghdadi Jews and Iraqi Jews. This way, I think Lauderdale Road both honours and its unique role as custodian of Spanish-Portuguese Jewish liturgy, but also embraces customs of the Jewish Middle East. Let's speak about Rabbi Abraham Levy, OBE. He was obviously the head over there. He lived between 1939, 16th of July 1939 to 25th December 2022. He was obviously an Orthodox rabbi, a theologian, and an author. He was the head of the Spanish-Portuguese community, varying time periods, but till 2012. According to one report, it was 1962 he would start his role, and this according to Wikipedia, using it as a source, and was a founding member of the Neymar Jewish Preparatory School. He obtained an officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for services on interfaith cooperation in 2004 in the New Year Honours list. And another key figure in the synagogue was Rabbi Solomon Gaon. He was a Hacham of the Spanish-Portuguese community of the British Commonwealth between 1912 to 1994. He was born actually in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Travnik. He studied in yeshiva in Sarajevo. Both his parents unfortunately were murdered in the Holocaust. He received his rabbinical ordination from the Jews College in London. In 1949, he became the Chacham of the Sephardi congregations of British Commonwealth. And Alan Mokota very much would talk about credit with reviving the declined community. I think in 1963 he became involved with the Yeshiva University in New York and was integral in the founding of its Sephardi studies program. He oversees activities, let's just say, in of itself. And let's just say, I think Rabbi Levy served as spiritual head after him. I'm not too sure the exact official date when he left. So somewhere reports that Rabbi Solomon Gaon was actually the chief rabbi, kept the title till his passing in 1994, which is very interesting enough also. Now, after he moved to New York, Rabbi Gaon did, he was connected, let's say, with the Spanish-Portuguese congregation Sherit Israel. In 1968, he was referred the main address at the dedication of the first synagogue consecrated in Spain since the expulsion of Jews in 1492. He became a professor of Yeshiva University in 1976, and he would found and direct the Jacob E. Safra Institute of Sephardic Studies. He served as president of the Union of Sephardic Congregations of the United States of America and Canada, and was a principal of the Sephardic people at an event at the Bet Yaakov Synagogue in Madrid when King Carlos of Spain revoked the 1492 Edict of Expulsion, and he received Spain's Prince of Asturias Award, also I believe in 1992, for a lifetime of effort seeking renewal of relationships between and among the Sephardi community and Spanish people. Now in 1991 he presided when Jewish services were held for the first time in 500 years in Zaragoza in Spain, respectively. Rabbi Solomon Gaon was also the author of various different great Torah books, including the prayer book for boys and girls in 1969, Haggadah, or Order of Services for Domestic Use. I think this was in 1975, printed in London. Book of Prayer of the Spanish-Portuguese Congregation in London. The influence of the Catholic theologian Alonso Tostado on the Pentateuch commentary of Isaac Barbanel that was printed at Kitav in 1993. And the Minhaj Shlomo was another book, a commentary on the Book of Prayer of the Spanish and Portuguese Jews Union of Sephardic Congregations. That was in 1990. So he was a famous rabbi over there. And we were speaking here about a special edition about the famous Lauderdale Road Synagogue based in London, and a famous synagogue we've spoken about on various occasions before. We did a video on the famous Bismarck synagogues also, if you can recollect, and we've spoken here about Lauderdale Road, again completed in 1896 and established in the year 1657, which is very, very interesting enough. So thanks very much for watching, everyone. Wishing you well, and blessings. Recording this actually from Jerusalem. I believe the current spiritual head of the synagogue is Rabbi Joseph Dweck, who happens to be the head of the Spanish-Portuguese congregation. And once again, it's based in Maida Vale in London. So thanks everyone for watching. Take care, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.